we have some breaking news to bring you. That is, Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, has said that Diane Abbott can stand as a Labour MP in this general election. This comes after 4 days of Abbott hokey-cokey. Was she in as a candidate or out? Was she allowed to stand or not? There has been outright chaos over the communications around this, whether she was barred or not. Well, now, a definitive answer from Sir Keir Starmer, which goes against something that he was saying earlier, which is that this is for the NEC to decide. It seems like this may have been a unilateral decision.
Yes, could you say this is a U-turn? It certainly looks as though he may well have been pressured into this. There was a huge rally of support from Angela Rayner, from the Scottish leader in Scotland, too, for the Labour Party. Anna Sarwar. And from many quarters, a huge support from the left of the party. He had a lot to go against if they were going to disallow Diane Abbott.
Well, shall we get the views now of the Health Minister, Maria Caulfield, standing again as a Conservative in this election. Maria, first of all, sorry to ambush you with this breaking news, but Diane Abbott now allowed to stand.
Yeah, well, it's the Labour Party are in complete chaos over this. It is a U-turn for Keir Starmer. He was put under pressure by his deputy, Angela Rayner. And, you know, I think it's quite embarrassing that if he can't even manage his own party, how does he expect to manage the country? You know, these are the difficult decisions a leader or prime minister would have to make. And he's been shown seriously lacking in that ability. And it just goes to show a little bit of pressure and he buckles completely.
Well, one could say at least Diane Abbott wanted to stand as a Labour candidate at the next election. We're hearing more and more Conservatives deciding that they won't do the same, standing back. Is it 79 now?
79.
79 Conservative MPs don't want to have another go at the general election. It doesn't look great for the leadership, does it?
Well, you know, we have been in government for a long time. Most of those MPs that are standing down have been in place for, you know, the 14 years that we've been in government. And I think in any job, any walk of life, whether it's as a TV presenter or an MP or a nurse even, you know, people don't tend to stay in jobs for that length of time. Being an MP is a difficult job. And if you've been in government as well and been a minister, it's extremely long hours, tough decisions. We've been through extremely challenging times the country with COVID, the war in Ukraine. And sometimes when it comes to an election, that is a point where people reassess the impact of the jobs on family life, on other pressures, things they want to do in terms of other opportunities. And so people do often make that natural decision at an election. And I think also the kind of the environment has changed for MPs, the sort of pressure from social media, security risks, you know, in the lifetime of this Parliament, since I've been an MP, I've lost 2 colleagues, you know, Joe Cox and Sir David Amess. That wasn't the case, you know, 10, 15 years ago. So I think it's you know, while the public often don't think MPs work that hard, it is actually quite a demanding job. And so we do come to a natural point when an election comes where MPs do often stand down.
Now, Maria, it's undoubtable that the Labour Party has had a more rocky few days in the last 2 or 3 days than they would have liked to have had, particularly around the Diane Abbott row. But I'm looking at the polls and I'm still seeing not even double-digit leads. We're looking at 10 or even to some extent 20, 25-point leads for the Labour Party in the polls. Is the game up? Do people simply not care what is going on in this general election? And whatever happens, they seem to have made up their minds.
Well, certainly that's not my experience from the door knocking I'm doing at the moment. I'm knocking on lots of doors and people are focusing their minds on the election. They are looking to see kind of the policies from both parties. But the overwhelming feeling on the doors that I'm knocking is they don't want Keir Starmer, and that's the clear choice people have to make. There's only 2 people who are going to be Prime Minister after July the 4th, and that's either Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer. And people are fearful because they don't know what Keir Starmer stands for. And some of the policies that are starting to merge, you know, are very wishy-washy, and we have U-turn after U-turn. So people are fearful. And the other thing I would say is we had local elections a few weeks ago, and actually in many cases those polls showed that there wasn't such a significant lead, and there could indeed be a hung parliament, and it was less than 10% in some places where, you know, and we did very well in the police crime commissioner elections. I think we won 19 out of the 33 police crime commissioners.
Maria, you're health minister, and one thing that we have heard quite a lot from the Labour Party is on their plans from the NHS. Wes Streeting has very much been making his pitch to the country. 44,000 fresh appointments every week. He's going to ask doctors and nurses to take on overtime to try and fulfil that promise. Funding is going to come from clamping down on tax avoidance and the like, non-dom status and things. Do you think the public know what your plans are?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I still work as a nurse in the NHS, and when he says he wants doctors and nurses to work overtime, it does make me smile, because I still do night shifts, and all the nurses are doing extra hours, as are the doctors. If Labour had a plan for the NHS, surely they would be making that happen in Wales, where they actually run the NHS there. The NHS in Wales has, much significantly longer waiting times, significantly longer backlogs. And that, their performance, whether it's A&E, cancer rates, they are all significantly worse than England. So it does make me smile that Wes Streeting has a plan for the NHS. If he did have a plan, surely they would have implemented it in Wales by now.
Maria, sorry to interrupt because we're running out of time, but how concerned are you about this junior doctor strike that's been announced just before the general election?
Well, I think it's very disappointing, because Victoria Atkins, the Health Secretary, has opened the door to negotiations and talks. They know that during an election period, the government can't put offers on the table. So it does feel very disappointing, because the only people who are going to suffer are patients at the end of the day. I'm very disappointed that the junior doctors have announced those strike days, knowing that the government's hands are slightly tied in negotiations during an election period.
Well, Maria Caulfield, Health Minister, thank you so much for joining us and talking through that wide array of issues.